Hello, and welcome to this episode of Gardening in the City. My name is Kane Adams, and I'm the superintendent with the City of Murfreesboro's Urban Environmental Department. Today, our guest is Dr. Frank Hale. Dr. Hale?
Hey, Kane, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for coming and being a guest on our show today.
Pleasure to be here.
Can you tell a little bit about your title and what you do with the Agriculture Extension?
Sure, I'm an extension specialist located at the Ellington Agricultural Center here in Nashville, and so I work the whole state, and it's about education to the general public across the state. I work with insects that attack ornamental plants, fruit crops, vegetable crops, turf grass, and also tobacco.
Okay. And on a previous episode, we had your counterpart, Dr. Wyndham, on, and he takes care of the diseases side. So
That's
now
right.
we've got the, we don't want to say the better half on Dr. Wyndham's half.
Maybe the more mobile side, the running around insects I like to work with.
Gotcha. Well, we see Dr. Wyndham out here a lot, and we definitely appreciate you coming on and joining us today.
Sure.
I don't think our viewing audience is really aware of what's on the forefront with the insects coming, specifically the emerald ash borer.
Sure. Us entomologists, we hear about these things well ahead of the general public. I probably heard about emerald ash borer first in around 2002 when it came to Detroit, Michigan area. And they found ash trees were dying. In probably 8 or 9 years, they think the infestation had been there before anybody even discovered it. So even the entomologists can be fooled. It takes us time to determine if something new is in the country often.
Well, did they ever figure out how I know this is an imported insect.
Sure, we think it probably came from Asia, probably China. There are ash trees over there, Manchurian ash, where this insect co-evolved on those ash trees. And there was a lot of wood packing material. And a lot of that material used to be, they would even use fairly green wood with bark on the outside, some of the edges of it, and it wasn't trimmed properly. And they think that's where the beetle would overwinter, right underneath the bark. And they think it probably came in on wood packing material. Since then, we're doing a better job of setting standards for that wood packing material so it won't harbor insects.
So you say it came into Detroit, and I know Ohio's been affected in a lot of the northern.
Yeah, the Midwest generally has been affected now since 2002 as it spread. And one of the problems was, since we didn't know we had it, people were actually moving firewood from dead ash trees that they would cut down, not knowing that it had this emerald ash borer in it. And so they moved it all over the place, and before we knew it, it was all sorts of places we didn't know where they were, away from the Detroit, Michigan area. So we really couldn't contain it. There were a lot of efforts done to maybe even cut down trees, make like a fire break out around the area. But the problem was it had already hopped over the fire break. It had already been moved by humans in trucks and backup pickup trucks all over the place.
And when you say that, you said that it was discovered in 2002, then you think it could have been already in place?
Yeah, it was probably 8 or 9 years before that where it first was introduced.
So it
had plenty of time to kill a number of trees in that area, and for that wood even to be cut down, made into firewood, and moved out of that area. And that was the problem right there.
So what kind of concerns me with that is if it's been 8 or 9 years since they actually discovered it, they really, in the beginning, didn't have any idea of how widespread the issue was.
No, they didn't. And even in Tennessee, where we discovered it in 2010 in Knoxville, Loudoun County line, right around there, they found some other infestations when we started looking that had been even probably earlier introductions.
Now that was found at a gas station at a rest stop actually a citizen from Ohio noticed it. And
yeah, I think it was somebody who worked for the government, knew something about it, and they reported it. So if you see trees that are dying for you don't know why, it's always good to report these things to somebody in the know.
Well, we've got a couple different varieties of ash trees here. I think we've got a green ash and a white ash. I think there's some blue ash.
Sure.
I've seen a few around town. Here, thank goodness we don't have too many of them. There have been some planted in the trade.
When you went up in the Midwest, ash trees was the common tree planted along streets, throughout neighborhoods, and it was almost a monoculture. And Tennessee sold thousands of ash trees to these Midwestern cities. Some of those cities have lost well, thousands of trees, and it's cost them millions of dollars to take those trees down because of emerald ash borer. In Tennessee, the density of ash is not as high. And so, you know, most of the time we talk to city foresters, urban foresters, and the first thing is, you know, make a map of your city area. How many ash trees do you really have? And then, do we want to protect some of those? We can use insecticides to keep ash trees alive. You don't just have to cut them down. Okay. But the best trees you might want to save. So we're in better shape here than up in the Midwest because ash is not the predominant street tree.
Well, and also we've had a chance to learn from the successes and failures of the initial treatments in, say, Michigan and Ohio, to what worked for them and what didn't. So we are ahead of the curve, so to speak, somewhat.
Sure, and what happened a lot of times, folks didn't know that they had a insecticide option. So they just cut down all the trees. So you have a city block and all the shade trees along the street are cut down. And it's going to take several years to get trees planted and many more years to get shade. And that's meant that it's made it hotter there. There's more runoff of water because it's not being taken up by the trees. Right. It's affected the whole thing. And so now we know we can budget, save certain trees using an insecticide, and it's not really that expensive. And you can budget that over, you know, 10, 20 years, as opposed to being hit with the cost of cutting all your trees down at one time. It might cost you $1 million in some of these cities or more. And they didn't have the budget. They didn't really plan on that.
The death of the trees is inevitable. If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is you can actually treat some of these trees to prolong the removals.
We have several insecticides, including imidacloprid, dinotefuran, and also there's a product called imomectin benzoate. The three brand names would be for imidacloprid, Merit, dinotefuran, Safari, and imomectin benzoate. There's a tree injection product called Triage. And these products, the tree injections done by a professional, gives you 2 years control. They inject it into the trunk of the tree. The other two products, Merit and Safari, can be drenched right around the base of the tree. Just mix it with water, pour it in the ground, it's taken up by the roots, and it helps protect the tree for a year.
Now, if the trees get to the EAB is in between the bark and the heartwood, or the xylem as we call it.
Yes.
So
feeding in that cambium area.
Yeah.
And the larva is what's doing the damage. They're, you know, white and maybe 1.5 inches long or so, narrow. The segments, the body segments, are sort of bell-shaped. And these larvae, you might strip a piece of bark off a foot square, and you might find 2 or 3 larvae feeding together. And they can make serpentine, S-shaped galleries as they chew through that vascular tissue and basically girdle the tree as they collectively feed on it.
So, in saying that, when that tree gets girdled from all the insect feeding inside there, that tree can no longer take up water and nutrients as needed. So therefore, some of those insecticide treatments might not be beneficial at that point. Correct?
Yes. You want to use the insecticide treatments. Start on those when you hear that it's in your county. Like Davidson County last year, in 2014, they found it in one area, Davidson County. I would say if you're in Davidson County, start treating your trees this spring, and from each year from then on. That's just a safe way to do it. If you wait till you get, you know, half of the leaves off the tree or branch die back pretty heavy, the tree's not going to respond as well. So it's better to start early.
So be more
proactive.
Proactive instead of reactive. And you were talking about some of the signs that you can kind of keep an eye on some of the ash trees. Can you kind of go over some of the signs we can expect to see?
Well, any kind of wood-boring insect, when it attacks a tree, affects the vascular tissue, you're going to see some thinning of the canopy, fewer leaves up in the upper canopy, in the tips of the branches. Eventually, you're going to see branch dieback. There won't be any leaves at all. The branches will actually die. Then you might see what we call epicormic sprouts. Around the base of the tree, you'll see sprouts coming out around the base. It looks real bushy. You might see cracks in the bark. And when the beetle will be in the tree for a full year, the larva, it pupates under the bark, and then it makes the adult beetle comes out, and it makes a D shape, like a capital D-shaped exit hole, about 1/8 of an inch, as that beetle emerges through the bark. those little D-shaped holes are kind of hard to see. One thing you might also see is woodpeckers will attack the tree. They'll strip the bark off. We call it blonding because the bark looks gray, but when you strip it down, it looks more of a blonde, brownish color. And you'll see the D-shaped exit holes as they're trying to get at the larvae or the beetles themselves.
And that's probably pretty visible from a distance, being able to see the discrepancy in the
color. I could see that from across the street or even further away.
So that's a pretty good
indicator.
But
that's an indication. They start attacking the tree at the top and work their way down. There's also a common wood-boring insect, clearwing moth. It's called the ash borer and the banded ash clearwing. It's a native insect. It makes a circular exit hole. And you might see circular exit holes in the trunk, and later the D-shaped ones as the emerald ash borer comes. So, but the native clearwing borers, the ash borer, most ash trees can handle that. It's this invasive pest from China that they really are totally susceptible to. They don't have any defense against.
Right, it doesn't have any natural predators either.
Not really. We have introduced some biological agents from, parasitoid wasp from Asia to help combat this, and we're trying to get those established. But the native pests don't seem to be doing a very good job. It's killing trees indiscriminately.
Well, something I picked up on and you were talking about is that they generally attack the top portions of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like it's going to be something hard for somebody on the ground to
you
identify.
Wouldn't see, initially you won't see the D-shaped exit holes down on the trunk. You'd have to go up into the canopy of the tree and look on the branches, because that's where the beetles will land in the trees, feed on the leaves a little bit, then start laying their eggs in the bark.
So that's why sometimes it's multiple years before you even realize that you've got a problem.
Yeah, it takes several years for the tree to be infested and to die. It might take 3 years or more. In good growing conditions, the tree can resist it for a while, but then it's going to start putting epicormic shoots and things like that. You'll see the damage.
So there's no doubt about it when you see it?
Yes, and once, a lot of people in the Midwest, the tree dies and they don't do anything about it, and the bark falls off the tree and it's dead. I mean, these trees are totally dead. They need to be cut down as soon as possible. If the tree's dying and you're not going to try to save it, because these dead trees can just fall over very quickly. It's sort of a brittle tree. It's known to fall on houses, cars, anything. It could fall on a person. So that's the danger of it, falling limbs and trees.
So once it dies, it
needs to be taken down quickly. If you wait till the bark starts coming off, the folks that are going to take the tree down for you are going to charge you more, because it's a more dangerous operation to do. They're going to have to trim, get up in the tree with a lift, cut the branches back and take it down that way. If it's near a house, you want to get it out sooner too, because it could be more dangerous. It could fall in the house.
Well, it's definitely an eye-opening experience, and you have been up into Ohio and Michigan and seen some of the damage. Can you kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what you have seen?
The first time I was up there was probably 2003 or so. It had been found in 2002 in Detroit, Michigan. Entomologists took a field trip, and we'd never seen this before. And we started peeling bark off the trees, and the whole side, the inside of the tree there, the cambium, was just riddled with these serpentine tunneling. You could see the exit holes. The trees, bark was peeling off the trees. And then when we found trees that weren't quite dead, we could peel it back and see the larvae. And you'd see several larvae in close proximity. And so the density can be very high underneath the bark. That's why they can do a lot of damage.
Quickly.
Yeah, quickly do a lot of damage. And remember, they're just sort of feeding year round, and a cumulative damage over several years is going to kill the tree.
Well, I know that the conference you spoke at here a couple of months ago at the Ellington Ag Center,
yes.
One of the speakers had brought some pictures and some photos. He was from the Ohio State University, and it showed some different campgrounds and different pictures of streets in Ohio, and it was just decimated. There are no trees whatsoever.
That's right.
The campground was completely
I believe there's some campgrounds, probably in East Tennessee, that they've had to take trees out of. And if ash is your predominant shade tree, it's open then, and you don't have much shade. So that can happen quite quickly.
When you're talking about planting predominantly one species, and which in return creates a monoculture, and in case you do have an outbreak of something that's very uncontrollable, it's even more reason why to plant multiple different varieties of trees.
Going down a street, you don't want to plant just all pin oak. You want to plant a variety of trees. Then if something comes in to take the oak out, for instance, you'll have some trees and you can just fill in the places.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But yeah, that can be quite devastating. And that's what happened in the upper Midwest, where ash was probably overplanted.
Hello, my name is Kane Adams, and I'm the superintendent with the City of Murfreesboro's Urban Environmental Department. With me today is Dr. Frank Hale. He's a plant entomologist with the University of Tennessee's Agriculture Extension. We're going to talk about some beneficial insects for your home and garden. Dr. Hale, can you give me some ideas on what types of insects are beneficial?
Sure, lady beetles feed on aphids and other soft-bodied insects. Everybody's familiar with ladybugs or lady beetles. We also have green lacewings. They have mandibles that are like pointed, and they're very good predators. Big-eyed bugs are some tiny little bugs that will feed on insect eggs. Of course, praying mantises feed on a lot of different insects. And we even have predatory mites that will feed on pest mites. So there's lots of different insects out there that are helping you in a beneficial way. Of course, bees and pollinators are considered beneficial also.
Now, what can we do to specifically target these beneficial insects and bring them into our yard or our garden area?
Sure, what we want to do is make a habitat. Our backyard, we want to make it very attractive to the insects. So we want to have things like forsythia plant blooming here that blooms early, or the saucer magnolia that blooms early to attract in the beneficial insects. They're looking for sources of nectar and pollen. Nectar is a carbohydrate source, pollen is a protein source. So if you have those sources of energy and protein for the insects, they will be more abundant. And then if you have pest insects, you'll have more of the beneficials to help take care of that.
Wow, that's some great tips, Dr. Hale.
And you want to have these plants that bloom early, throughout the early spring, early summer, throughout the midsummer, into the fall. So you have something blooming all throughout the growing season to attract and keep the beneficials in your yard.
Well, Dr. Hale, we appreciate you coming today and talking with us about all the different insects and what's beneficial and what's not. And if you'll follow Dr. Hale's tips and advice on beneficial insects and promoting those insects, you'll have a much prettier looking yard, landscape, and vegetable garden. Welcome back. We're going to continue our talk here today with Dr. Hale on the emerald ash borer, and I want to expound a little bit more on our talk about how it was found in Tennessee, where it was found, and how it spread since we've actually recognized it being a problem here in the state.
Sure. It was originally found in July or August of 2010. It was found right about on the Knox-Loudoun County line at a gas station there. And what had happened, there had been some trees that had, ash trees that had been planted there that had actually died, been cut down, and the wood had been just dumped to probably 100, 200 yards from the gas station along the side of the road. And we actually went there and investigated, found the wood, and we could find the exit holes from this beetle.
So that was in 2010, and now being roughly 2015, within 5 years, it's gone from being in one county to where pretty much the entire eastern portion of the state is.
Good part of, yes, we have a quarantine set up there. That basically means if it's been found in your county, the state would dictate this. You cannot move firewood or ash lumber, things like that, out of your county into a non-quarantine county. We even have some counties called buffer counties around the quarantine counties. So you could move things from the buffer county into the quarantine county, but not the other way around.
What's the chances of these bugs not only traveling on firewood or lumber or things like that, with traveling on vehicles or attached to humans? Or?
Yeah, they could do that. They could hitchhike in cars and things. They're about a 1/2 inch emerald green beetle, about 1/8 of an inch in sideways. So I mean, its length is a 1/2 inch and width is about 1/8 of an inch. So they're very tiny. they could hitchhike that way. They can fly also, several miles possibly. So they're going to, natural spread's going to occur regardless.
You know, we've got the section of eastern Tennessee that's in quarantine, and here last year they found an actual EAB in Davidson County. You know, what's the status on that at the moment?
Well, the year before that, I believe they found them in Jackson and Smith County, which was the farthest west into Middle Tennessee. Then, of course, last year they were caught in Davidson County. How did they find these? We actually put out these sticky traps. They look like a box kite, and they're purple. And on the outside of it is a sticky tanglefoot. It's like a sticky, clear stuff that insects will be attracted to, the color, the purple color, and they'll stick to the trap. So they actually caught an adult beetle last summer in Davidson County, and so we haven't actually found the infestation, the trees that are being attacked, but we know there's at least, you know, a beetle there flying around, so we suspect there'll be others.
And our conversation earlier said, you know, it took multiple years to realize that, you know, you had a problem. So just kind of assuming, since you've seen that,
yeah,
you know that the problem's somewhere, it just hasn't been located yet.
Yeah, we think there's an infestation, just a matter of finding it, and it might have been there several years. We just don't know.
So that brings me to my next question. Us being in Rutherford County, it's not very far from Davidson.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
There's a good chance they're already here.
All the counties around Davidson County, we have traps in those counties also, and we're looking for it. But keep your eyes out. If you see a tree, you know, homeowners could spot this and help people find out where it is. Unfortunately, we can't stop the spread right now. It's going to, eventually it's predicted it's going to kill most all of the ash trees in North America. And that goes to show you the danger of these invasive pests. And how do we get them here? Well, it's trade. We're trading with countries all over the world. We're shipping, you know, millions of these containers are coming into the country. Not all of them can be inspected. We like to inspect things back at the home ports where things come from. That's the best place to start looking. But eventually things are going to end up over here, and even though we do our best to detect things, and sometimes we do stop things, there's many things that slip through the cracks.
Well, I know we definitely appreciate all the UT Ag Extension's hard work on this and bringing it to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've already started formulating a plan here. Our global mapper that sits up here in the building that right behind us is already working on a mobile app to where we can GPS locate these ash trees as they're found in the field. We've got different employees that have that capability with their smartphones nowadays. We can grade those trees and constantly monitor these to kind of keep an idea and know.
Yeah, I would say you want to pick out the trees that you want to save. The trees in a high visibility area that's a sound tree, a good tree, and those trees you might want to start very soon using the insecticide treatments. You could probably wait till it's found in Rutherford County to start that. You don't have to start it that far ahead of time.
Okay.
But then once you've identified those trees, you can keep them alive and they'll be fine. The trees that you're not going to save in the forest, they're going to fall down. But trees that are in an area where people are, you're going to have to plan on budget for taking those trees down for safety's sake.
And you've talked about a few different options on insecticides we can use. You know, of course, with that comes another cost.
Sure.
And I think you kind of look at each individual insecticide. I know we've talked about it before that there's some of them are a little bit more cost effective versus the benefits, mm-hmm. and how well they work.
Well, the triage, which is the tree injection product, that's going to be more expensive, but it lasts for several years. You have to hire somebody to do that or be trained to do that. There's also a product called Imicide, which has a metocloprid, and it's a Moget type of tree injection. Okay. And that probably has to be done every year. As far as the easiest way to do it is just drench the insecticide, either Merit or metocloprid or the Safari, which is dinotefuran, around the base of the tree. And those you can actually buy those insecticides. They do have a metocloprid that's targeted for homeowners. It's called the Bayer Advanced Tree and Shrub Insect Control, for instance. That is targeted for the homeowners. You can also buy at a co-op and other places 2F formulation like Merit 2F, and there's other generic products. so you don't have to buy the merit. You can buy, and so you can get it relatively inexpensively. So it might only cost you $10 to $20 a year to treat a tree. And really, you budget that over 20 years, it's not a lot of money.
It's going to be a lot less than having somebody come in and take
Sure.
it down, especially with the location, like about if it's around a house, trees, or something that has a lot
Sure.
of targets.
Yeah, so you want to keep good trees. If it's a good sound tree, keep it in your yard, we can protect it. So that's the plus. And why are invasive pests such a problem? With trees, we've seen a lot of these pests. It goes back to millions of years ago when all the continents were together. It was called a supercontinent called Pangea. The ancestors of ash trees were on this Pangea. As the continents drifted apart, we developed ash trees developed in Asia, ash trees developed here and elsewhere probably. So what it means is there's a common ancestor of ash in Asia and also is developed in North America. So when the insect only developed in Asia, in the emerald ash borer case, so all the millions of years that ash have been in North America, they've never seen this insect. They have no defense, chemical defense. They haven't co-evolved with that insect. And so the Manchurian ash can resist it in Asia, where our ash species are susceptible. We've had a series over the years of invasive pests. You know, you think back to elms and the Dutch elm disease, took out many elm trees. They were a common city tree. We've had more recently dogwood anthracnose in the East Tennessee primarily that have killed a lot of the dogwoods in the forest. Just a disease that just showed up. We've had balsam woolly adelgid kill some of the fir trees up in the Smoky Mountains, for instance. So if you go to the Smoky Mountains, the park's not the same component of trees as it used to be. We're seeing right now the hemlock woolly adelgid is attacking the hemlock trees. And these are some of the biggest trees in the park, and they're dying across the park. We can protect individual trees with some of these systemic products that we talked about for emerald ash borer, but we can't treat all the trees in the forest. It's just not practical. And we are releasing biological control agents. We have a biocontrol lab at UT Knoxville, and we release these little beetles to feed on the hemlock woolly adelgid. So that's a big program at UT.
Like you said, it's the best, but it's one of the hardest to
It takes a lot of research, sure does. And that's why students and professors at the University of Tennessee and elsewhere work on these projects.
Well, something during break we were talking about that I think we want to share with our guest here is the Asian longhorn beetle and how it was found and where it is currently populated.
Yes, the Asian longhorn beetles in general are a family of insects called the cerambycid beetles. They have long antennae. Sometimes the antennae are as long as the length of the body or longer. So they call them longhorn beetles. The larvae are called round-headed borers. They're cylindrical and they make circular tunnels, and their exit hole out of the bark of the tree is circular too. Some of them is as big around as a pencil, diameter of a pencil, 1/4 inch or bigger. The Asian longhorn beetle attacks maples and buckeyes and a lot of trees like that. And we really don't want this becoming widespread because there's just a lot of maple trees in North America. The USDA has actually tried to eradicate them whenever they're found. They've eradicated them in Chicago and different places around in the east. And the latest infestation that they're working on right now is east of Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's out in the country a little bit. It's over a pretty good size area. They're cutting trees down, they're chipping them. They're also using a lot of these systemic insecticides.
Well, Dr. Hale, you've been a great guest today and with a lot of information, and we really do appreciate you coming and taking some time out of your schedule and being our guest on Gardening in the City.
Thanks, Kane. Really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. We really did appreciate it. And stay tuned for our next episode of Gardening in the City. Thank you for watching.